So in the past 2 days, I've had at least three strangers tell me that they can't do yoga because they're not flexible enough. So I feel like it's important to talk about what yoga actually is, because yoga isn't just about whether you put your foot behind your head. Yoga is something much bigger and much deeper than that. And so let's start by talking about what the word yoga actually means. So yoga can be translated as yoke, not like an egg yolk, but a yoke, like two ox, when they're pulling a load, they're connected by something that goes across their back to connect them together, right? So you have this going around each of their necks, and then they have to stay together. They can't go off their separate ways. So the oxen are teaching us what yoga actually means. It means to join. So putting two things together. So since we're not using it to actually make oxen pull our loads, what are we joining together? We're joining together our mind and our body. So sometimes we go around all day and we actually forget that we have a body. We forget that we're breathing. Did you remember right now that you were breathing? Are you always paying attention to your breathing? And sometimes we don't even pay attention to the feelings in our bodies, and not until something hurts us, right? But right now, like, do you know how your toes feel? Or do you know how your legs feel? When is the last time you checked in and said, how do you feel? So sometimes we're very much just in our thoughts. We're just thinking about all these things and not really feeling so much. And then other times we are just doing things with our bodies, right? But not thinking about what we're doing. We're just reacting. So, maybe if you get mad and you just automatically hit your brother or sister because you're angry, that's your body just doing something without your mind being involved with it. And so yoga helps us to join both of those together. And that's why it's called yoga. It's union. And so obviously the only way to do that isn't to put your foot behind your head, because that's not exactly going to change much. So yoga, which is very old, it's 5,000 years old, it's part of a system. So they say there's 8 limbs of yoga. So I always like to use an octopus, because think of what has 8 limbs. If a limb is like an arm or a leg, right? It's like an octopus. There's 8 limbs. You can also call it the 8 branches. And you can think of, or limbs, because that works with a tree too. So you can think of a tree or an octopus. And of those 8, only one of them has to do with putting your body in poses. Okay, and that's called asana, because asana means seat. That's its translation. And seat was what they called all of the different positions they were going to put their body in. But there were all these other things that yoga was all about, right? So obviously the poses are not the most important part about yoga. All these things are how to live your life and be kind and be honest, and how to breathe and how to pay attention and how to use your senses and how to practice meditation and how to focus and concentrate and how to relax enough to actually be right here, right now. Instead of thinking about everything that already happened or everything that's going to happen, how can you just pay attention to right now? And so that's what yoga teaches us through all of these things, right? And the poses came along because the yogis wanted to meditate. They wanted to relax, and they wanted to understand, what is my mind made of? And where do all these thoughts come from? And how can I be more peaceful? And so they would sit down and try to just be still and quiet to understand this. But after a while, their tushes started to hurt, right? They were sitting on rocks and in caves, and their bodies were just like, ow, this is not comfortable. And so when they looked around, they saw all the dogs doing different things and the cats, and they saw the trees actually still moving in the wind. And that's when they started to move their bodies into different positions so that their bodies would be more able to sit down for meditation. And so that's the only reason why yoga poses exist. And sometimes today in yoga, we don't always hear the whole story. So if you think you can't do yoga because you're not flexible in your body, that's wrong. Yoga is something much bigger, and all the poses definitely help us, and they help us take care of our bodies, and they help our bodies to relax more. That's definitely not what yoga is all about. So we can remember our little oxen when we think about yoga, and anything we do to help join our mind and our body, that's yoga.